is thick.
Hello, listeners. This is Burdock Radio, and I'm your host, Keith Gosted. With me this week are Scott Johnson and Alexi Easton of Hey John. Say hello, fellas.
Hello, Milwaukee and the world.
Hello.
And what you just heard was The Air is Thick from the Burdock 10 CD, and it was by the group Here.
Yeah, that's a project that is like sound collage pieces that myself and Levi Stair put together. A lot of it is found sound, which is a similar approach to making music or audio pieces that Alexi and I here have done with the recent Hey John project.
Okay, and that's kind of a nice segue. Thank you very much. We're going to go talk about Hey John next. So, back in February, right? I believe.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember now. So long ago, it was the winter still. We had the last installment of Burdock Presents. Not the last, not set in stone. Hopefully, I'll be bringing it back soon. But I was doing a live music and poetry series to kind of complement what had taken place with the release of Burdock 10. And you guys came out and did Hey John. And I had never heard Hey John before. I had heard Scott playing drums for 1913, and I had heard Alexi in Speaker Dust over at the Woodland Pattern Music Marathon one year, I know.
Okay, yeah.
But I didn't know that you guys had worked together until you approached me about doing Hey John as opposed to playing Here or the other piece on Burdock 10. So
I remember when you were kind of percolating Burdock 10 when it was kind of getting going. It was right when Alexi and I started working over at his studio to kind of put it together. So it was kind of in my mind as you were putting it together. So I was really happy to be able to do a set in conjunction with the release of Burdock 10.
Right. And so going back a little bit, you're using found sound, basically, for Hey John. And tell me how you found John. Well, tell me what it is first, I guess.
Well, basically, the answering machine messages are all from one standard-sized cassette tape that came out of an answering machine at some point. But I was testing some equipment for myself and fellow DJs, and in addition to that, we got a box of cassette tapes. And as I was going through equipment, I would listen to these tapes, and most of them were music or mixtapes people had made, things off the radio. But there was a tape in there that obviously came from an answering machine. I listened to it, and it was just a series of messages to this guy named John, and everything from the mundane to the very important, glimpses into his life through just a answering machine tape. And it was so interesting how some of it seems very important. Some of it was, it could wait. Some people were loud, some were quiet. And it was interesting that people left messages knowing that it wasn't going to be heard right away. There wasn't in the immediacy that there is today when people leave messages for people. It kind of stood out right away. So that's where the tape came from.
Yeah, there's all sorts of artifacts in this tape that, like Alexi was just saying, where, you hear things like his hospital had called or his work calling to approve overtime, and then kind of things where we had imagined later in the evening people would be calling, and you kind of reveal a bit more about who John may be. And while editing the piece, we had cut out a lot of the specifics of it, like last names, locations, real specific things as to kind of make it a bit more of a ambiguous and universal character. And I think we were lucky to have had Alexi had found the message with this John guy, because John is a very everyman type of a name, so it kind of appeals to that universal character, so everyone can kind of find their way into it.
Yeah, we had felt right away it would have been a completely different project if his name was Peter,
right,
or something like that. So, yeah, the everyman thing really came into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's really something interesting to me about this kind of new nostalgia type of a concept where, tape messages, most of us remember now that, you'd leave a message for someone, you might not get a call back. There's not that immediacy concept again. And
and the way that the answering machine tapes functioned for the machines is they would just sit on the tape, and then you have this actual artifact, whereas now with voicemail it comes up, like sometimes my voicemails just delete automatically, and then there's not like a tangible object either.
Yeah.
Like finding that tape.
Mm-hmm.
You said you found
Absolutely.
it at a where'd you find it again? Like
well, somebody had donated a bunch of equipment to a bunch of DJs and I. We were testing the equipment, and in that, because we were doing a benefit, and in the donated equipment was a bunch of tapes, and that was one of them. And I always hung on to it. And this was about 10 years ago, so I've had that tape for quite a long time. It's been
percolating that long.
Yeah, and I sampled it, digitized it, preserved it, and kind of used it for other sound collage projects. But when Scott and I started to collaborate, we really kind of thought, hey, we could go a little further with just this one thing, and we've kind of taken it as far down the rabbit hole, I think, as you can go. But and that's why we're doing live shows. The audience is certainly helping us get there as well, because people interpret things differently.
Well, what got you guys collaborating in the first place, if you don't mind? I'm curious.
No,
how do bandmates meet? Is the question.
Yeah, I think a lot of Milwaukee's a beautiful city where it's big enough and it's small enough where it's like it's a village, and after being around a while and seeing shows and going to films and things like that, you end up meeting people with similar aesthetics and good friends. So we had played quite a few shows in this group Speaker Dust that we still do, all improvisational sets for that, and that's during several of the Speaker Dust sets, this John message would come up, and I usually play drums on that, and it always was really intriguing to me, and it really sounded like it was something in itself. So after one of the shows, I think Lexi and I were just sitting down, watching the next band, and started to dream up this project.
Right. Well, if you don't mind, I would like to play the sample that I've got here from the Stage Right show that you did for the Burdock Presents series. And I just wanted to, is there anything you want to do to set it up? Because I've listened to it. This is a little bit more, it's a lot more of just people calling up kind of mundanely. But I think there's definite moods to the Hey John. That's what I think is interesting about it. But,
I think with this segment, it was our first live performance. And so, I think the listener should remember that the messages were paced out, but all of the audio, the sounds you hear are completely improv. And so this was the first live show. And yes, these messages are from earlier in the set, so they tend to be a little bit more mundane, or, we all might get a call from the librarian that media is in, or we all might get a call that our overtime is or isn't approved, or,
right.
we have an appointment, something like that. But this is specifically toward him. And you hear those different voices and those different people. And then later on, of course, the rest of the piece builds on that. Right. So it's a great place to start.
Okay, well, here we go. Here's the stage right set. Hey, John.
This is Dawn. I'm going to go downtown and check out a woman, well, you probably know Monique. She's performing tonight at Cafe Melange, and I thought you might be into going. I'm thinking that she'll probably perform around 10, so if you get in before then, or if you're interested, give me a call.
Zucker Free Radio away. John. This is on the delivery. Sorry for the shortage there. We'll take care of it.
All right. I love that piece. I was listening to it a little. I listened to it when I got the track, and so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about process. Now, how do you create or decide to even create the moods that you use? Because one of the things that I really liked, and I was just noticing it again, is how there's this space sometimes between messages, and there's this mood that's created and the sounds that are happening, and what I like about that is the way that it reminds me of when I used to have a answering machine, and you just wait for a call,
right?
Or you hope you get a message. You go out, you do your thing during the day, and you come back, and there's that one blinking light, and you're like excited. Or you come home and there's no blinking light. You feel like no one loves you.
Exactly.
And I think that tension is kind of recreated there. So how did you decide to do that?
Yeah, we had listened to the tape as just the found sound, and essentially we could have just played the tape, puristically and perform music over that, but we decided to kind of take it in a little bit of a more specific direction in terms of kind of memorizing all of these messages, so to create a storyline, a very ambiguous storyline. Actually, it's kind of riding that line of, is there something going on, where we kind of frame it like he's kind of going missing at the end of the piece, and there's some dramatic build-up towards the end. And I think it's actually there in the piece. And it's a 50-minute piece, so the excerpt that you just heard is only 5 minutes of that. So it's kind of a durational piece where about 10 minutes in, you really settle into the pacing of that space between the messages, where it has still the cadence of a systematic like tape message, where between every message it's still pretty equal, where it feels a little bit structured or found still. But how we arrive and get to each of those messages, there's a little bit of time there to kind of generate a bit of a mood. So essentially I feel like we listened to what the piece wanted to do. There's only so much to work from because we didn't add anything to it. So once we had memorized the audio, we kind of listened to it, edited it together, and then that's kind of what we do live. Is we'll have the 50-minute edit that we play, and that's the structure, and then everything else is improvised in terms of the soundtrack.
All right, now so when how much John is there, by the way? Like this one tape, is that 50 minutes of messages? Do you have more that you haven't played?
No, if you played every message back to back, there would probably be about 30 minutes of pure messages. And there would be about another 10 minutes of messages and or sounds that we just didn't use.
Right.
Because there was a quality issue, or it gave something too specific, or there was, we protected the identities of a few people, places, and things.
And there's some Milwaukee stuff in there, right?
Yeah, actually, the piece we listened to, the woman had mentioned that her and her friend are going to Bodolino's, and that's a restaurant near the university that is no longer there. They also mentioned Mayfield's, which was an old River West haunt.
Cafe Melange?
And a Cafe Melange, which was a place downtown that a lot of really cool things went on there. So yeah, there's something special there too, because I know I certainly remember those places, and I know a lot of our listeners do as well.
Right.
So yeah, for the soundtrack, we really kind of wanted to create a mood that sort of added to the ambiance of the piece, as well as a little more of a literal translation of what it might sound like to almost hear electricity, or to hear the sounds that might be coming through a phone, or and that's real typical of an old answering machine, where you would get tape squeaks and beeps and
the white noise,
and an operator, or somebody would hang up and you don't get a message from them, but you get some kind of a callback or some kind of system message. So we definitely wanted to try to play on that and give a sense of you almost having one ear on someone's answering machine and then another ear on a switchboard, as if lines were crossed. And when we improvise, we really try to kind of stick with that theme. But still have the freedom to move around in there, the way we want to, create the piece at that moment. And that's the wonderful thing about improv, is you can do that.
So you kind of have the tapes and the messages, and those are like the set in stone parts.
Correct.
Yep. Do you ever alter the order of them at all to change the storyline? Or
No, it's pretty much structured, and so we'll kind of hear these messages that are kind of chapters, if you will, and how we get to that chapter, there's certain ones that have a real dramatic quality to them, which is in the next excerpt that we'll be playing. There's this character that kind of introduces a bit of like hostility, and I know that when I hear his message, it's time to kind of get the delay going, and all sorts of things.
Yeah, so that also speaks a little bit to the recording process. There was a, and this goes back to when we were creating the piece. There's some people who only call once, and so however that sounds is however that sounds. But when we were editing the piece and mixing it, we were experiencing this. There was somebody who and some people speak right into the phone, and some people kind of hold it further away from their mouth when they talk. And we all do that, and that really comes across on those messages. But there was a woman who calls a number of times, and we were trying to mix her messages in, and we were having difficulty doing that. And then I realized, I said, she's calling from different phones.
Yeah, that's a beautiful nuance to it, is that we realize, here's this woman, Elizabeth, I think.
Yes.
The character's name.
Yes.
And yeah, she's calling from these different phones. And something as subtle as that is actually pretty beautiful. I think if people spend enough time with the piece as we have, or even a quarter of the piece as we have, they'll start to pick up on the subtleties in there. I think there's enough there for multiple listens and to come to multiple shows, because every time it's different, yet you hear these same characters. And another thing about the soundtrack that we try to create live is that if we can kind of mimic with our electronic setup sounds of like dial tones, busy signals, things like that, I think are really grounding for the listener to hear those things, because they make a direct correlation that this is really connected to the characters. So if we can achieve that live, I feel like it's a successful performance. And then there's also generating mood and a bit of music. There's some chords and very brief melodies, but mainly it's just getting those sounds that are related to the telephone. I like how you had mentioned the lines crossing. We had never really talked about that. It's the spontaneity.
Right.
And
go ahead.
I know that character, Elizabeth, she actually says, I think in one of the messages later in the piece, that she's at her parents' house, and we kind of thought, well, perhaps she calls once from home and maybe once from work and once from a friend's house, and that's 3-4 different phones. Now with a cell phone today, you wouldn't do that. You would always call from that same phone.
Yeah.
And there again, when you're hearing an old answering machine tape, like you hear system sounds, busy signals, dial tones, and things that just do not come through on a digital network because they're not part of the system. Whereas on this older, analog telephone system, they existed, and those pulse and tones meant something, and, were triggers. And so when we create the audio, we really, there again, try to, capture that and think about that and keep our sounds with, in concert with the sounds that appear on the original tape, such as when you hear it as a live performance or the excerpts, any dial tone or click that is on that tape is an actual sound of someone hanging up an old plastic phone. None of that was, made by us. That was really on that original tape.
Oh,
and we left it as is.
Right.
So.
I think during that last show that we had at Quarters that Danya Luck had set together, DJ Station, as a lot of you know her as, there's like this real heavy bass in it. And it was like, this fantastic dial tone that is just incredibly heavy bass with these delay washes and these messages rolling through. There's the thread of the phone messages happening. And it's just really exciting to me, and I think it definitely creates a vibe and a story that is pretty interesting. I think we're really honored to be a part of this upcoming. The next show is at the Nut Factory.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
Midwest Small Press Fest.
We're going to spend a good chunk of time talking about that. But I want to get to. Did you have something you wanted to?
No, that's great. I think we can move on to the next piece.
Yeah, I'd love to play this. I misspelled it when I entered it in. So it's the Quarters extract. This is what was the date on this the show? Because I know the stage right was back in February.
It was May 5th.
May 5th. Yeah, that's the Cinco de Mayo show.
It's a noise gala.
How long in between shows do you guys usually gone? Because how many shows have you played for?
We've only played it live twice.
So
this shows. Yeah.
Stage right was an entirety. And did you play it in its entirety at Quarters?
Yes, we did.
That's amazing because and I'm just thinking like the people like sitting there are just gonna. It's like an audio movie or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a 50-minute piece, and I think it worked out good with the Quarter show because it was curated well in that we opened the night up and we established a certain mood, and then it proceeded to have like a DJing and a bit more of like a rhythmic-based music, but still had like the electronic washes and things like that in it. So I think it's a good like way to start up an evening. Is to kind of have the story happen and people can meander, and it's always beautiful. As Alexi and I were putting this together in the winter at his studio, we were just so involved that once we're doing these shows live, people are laughing at certain moments, and that's really incredible to hear that.
We didn't anticipate any of that, and actually I don't think we really anticipated any sort of reaction. We just kind of thought like, wow, can we really do this? Will we pull it off? How will this sound to other people? Because by the time we were ready to do a live show, we had heard it ourselves so many times that the meaning would go back and forth for me personally, and we were really excited to get it in front of the ears of other people, and the fact that they've embraced that and found humor in it and emotions, and could or also get an ominous sense that well at first the librarian calls and then his friend wants to borrow some an Allen wrench, but then something's not right now.
Something went awry.
He's not calling back.
Well, let's listen to that Quarters extract right now.
Okay.
And here you are. Hey, John.
Sort of independent of anything I I've read or heard. This is entirely my own idea, but what do you think about this?
All right. So here's one. I was thinking about it's Hey John kind of being a like an art installation piece, and yet both the shows that you've played so far have been at like bars.
Right.
And I was just thinking about how neat that is to have it, what is essentially kind of like a gallery piece being played at an environment or in an environment that is not necessarily going to give the same vibe as a gallery, and how cool that is. And then yet tomorrow you're going to be playing at the Nut Factory, which is definitely a gallery space, or even more of an art studio space, I would say.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that speaks to Milwaukee's culture that we have here, and how there's so much going on that you could go to Quarters, which is the Rock and Roll Palace, I guess. And,
a lot of really
I guess
good
it's
heavy
back
metal
up,
shows.
right? And yeah, there's so much stuff going on, and you know, I think it's incredible what Danya's doing over there, and you know, you can take these places and you almost have like these open parties, if you will, kind of these turn a bar into a gallery for a night. That's how I feel like the Circle A is like that. And there's a bunch of other places too that, yeah, I think we should maybe try to do a Circle A show. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be great. They're very hospitable over there. Yeah, I think those are both really good venues to play live. They're both very welcoming and comforting. Everybody was really great. And, you know, for kind of an experimental piece, you never really know how it's going to go over with the staff or the audience.
Right.
But at both shows, it went really well. And as Scott had mentioned, the show at Quarters was, you know, an electronic showcase, live PA DJs ourselves. And I think we fit really well with that. It was well curated. And then the Stage Right, too, was just a great place to get a live recording, a very warm room. And, you know, they do a lot of... You know, those are places where, you know, they do different kinds of things, different, you know, avant-garde and freak shows and, you know.
Yeah, it's like comedy and acoustic jazz. You know, James Murphy's done a bunch of stuff over at Stage Right.
Yeah. He used to be a regular performer, and he's taking time off. He's going to be coming back, I think, soon.
Oh, good, yeah.
I don't know if he's going to come back regularly, but yeah, there's just a plethora of really good musicians that were coming through there last winter.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a good little venue for that intimate environment. I want to talk a little bit more about the Nut Factory show being part of the Midwest Small Press Fest.
Yeah.
And how did it all come about that you got involved in it?
Cynthia Spencer kind of contacted me and Alexi, as well as you, Keith, as this kind of thing was germinating, and we had met up for some coffee and talked about the potential of having a Hey John set for the as part of the Midwest Small Press Fest. And I think it really works in a great way that there's this kind of language that ties everything together, where people have this opening reception at the Woodland Pattern tomorrow, and then followed by that, there's AV Literary Theatrics, as it were, over at the Nut Factory, and I think it's an interesting invitation, and we're definitely into that. I think it'd be cool too to do a performance with an art gallery that maybe has themes around, old technology, or certain things that are kind of this new nostalgia concept that would work out well. But a little bit of information about tomorrow's show. We're going to be going on around 10 o'clock, but the AV Literary Theatrics start up at the Nut Factory, which is at 3720 North Fratney Street. And I think we go on around like 10 or 11. We're one of 3 acts that are kind of finishing the evening off the first night of the Midwest Small Press Fest.
Yeah, Nut Factory is a really interesting place. I had a friend, Kyle Fitzpatrick, used to have a studio space up there, and I went up to visit a gallery night that they had, and it was great. I mean, the size of the studios that they have in there allows the people to get really expansive with their mediums, you know what I mean? Like, just absolutely. Kyle, for example, was just painting on enormous canvases. There's other people there just doing really huge sculpture, and because it's an old factory, they can do a lot of like kind of heavy industrial art, even if they want to.
Yeah, I was really excited to play there when I found out that the theatrics was at the Nut Factory, because I do go to their open house every February, and it is a really unique space. Different studios with different floor plans, and like you said, they can do very large scale art, or you can do things with forging and glass because of the cement floors, and because they've had this open house for a few years, it is a place that's on the map, for people to go to and experience something unique. And Hey John definitely fits in with that. And then again too, with the press festival, the literary theme, I think it's going to be really neat to play in front of people who are sort of wordsmiths themselves, who are writers, who are people who consume copious amounts of magazines and poems and books and things like that, who are going to be able to maybe pick up on the word choice and the accents and the intonations.
Yeah, the broken narrative of the piece
and the narrative itself, the storyline. I think that's going to be a really great crowd to play in front of. And there again, it's unique because this is one of our first live shows, and the other 2 places were more like live music venues, and this is going to be a really cool art space to perform in. So we're really looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Now, it changes each time because it is improvisational.
Yes.
Right.
But you are planning on doing a live album, or?
Yes, it actually started that way. Once we really kind of carved out those messages, like we had described earlier, we did the audio to it, and this was our project last winter. And we have an album version, which is audio over the messages as you hear them live, but that album version was improv when we originally recorded it.
Right.
So we just took a section. You used about 75% of what we recorded, and so there is an album version. And then that kind of said, wow, this really turned out great. Maybe we could do this live. Maybe we should do this live.
Yeah.
So then we made like a live mix. And then kind of thought, well, how are we going to do this? Well, I thought we'll make a live mix of just the messages, and then we'll improv over it. And Scott came to my studio, and we hooked up all the equipment the way we recorded it, and kind of did a live performance in the studio to make sure we could technically do it with the equipment we were going to use live, hooked up that exact way. And that's the way we've done it every time.
Right, and then we look at each other and go, it's working.
Right. Like, we get surprised ourselves every show, that, yes, it's working, because somebody laughs or somebody, says, or, if you look out into the crowd, sometimes, you can see people squinting their eyes and really listening.
Right.
And then, we get this thrill of, oh my God, it's working, that, that narrative, there's a connection there.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting.
Yeah, and there's this whole mood around it, like almost like that Here piece at the beginning, how it talks about the air being thick. There's just like something in the piece that is just like, really moving, and kind of there's some drama to it, which I think it does tell a story. And it's specific enough where these things are happening to this guy John, which I'd love to meet John.
Yeah,
I kind of would. That'd be a nice result.
I know.
To
Actually,
the
if I had mentioned this earlier, I said, you know, when we go to press with this thing, when we make that CD, we need to put a correspondence email, and so
yeah. So that's kind of why we're on air.
Honestly, John,
if kind of hope that he's listening right now. And,
if you're out there, John, by all means, get in touch with us or anybody else who knows that they're on that answering machine. If you happen to hear your voice, please, you know, give us a shout and embellish us on what's going on.
right. And like the full album version has a lot more layers to it. We basically did several takes over the sound messages that we had edited together into the 50-minute piece. And then there's this whole like audio soup that is now the LP version, if you will. So it's really dense. It's a bit different than the live versions. The live versions are a little more minimal. There's one pass through, you know, because it's live, and how we approach it. I could see us, and I think we talked about this in the past, where we release like a LP version that's a bit more dense, and then a live version. I really think it could be interesting, and thankful to Ross Oldenburg, who has recorded both of the live shows, and is planning to record tomorrow's set. And he's kind of making it possible for us to have these excerpts that to kind of introduce the project to people.
Yeah, Ross is a real hero. We're going to have to get him on the Burdock Radio soon.
Yeah, it helps us, you know, document the experience and, you know, relate to the piece and, you know, to hear some of the audience chatter and to kind of review it, because, you know, when you listen to a show that you've done, it's always a much different experience than when you played it. So, yeah, we're really appreciative that Ross is able to help us kind of capture that moment.
Yeah, he's part of the process where he's kind of on board as our guy. He's our friend at this project where we can do a set, listen to it via Ross's will, and we just try to work out concepts and make it stronger.
Do you find yourselves critiquing anything when you play or listen back, or do you find yourselves wanting to move certain directions, or is this how you maybe decide on moods that you want to strike up?
Yeah, I think that taste always, makes what is occurring, and to be responsible for time passing is a challenging thing when there's a 50-minute piece, because you really have to keep the dynamics going and kind of keep it fresh. So I'm really happy that both times that we've played it, we haven't really dropped the dynamic levels really, and it's just kind of kept constant, I feel, and that's just trying to really focus and be inventive and playful. And I think a lot of the crutch, if you will, in a sense, is to have those like dial tones where Alexi and I will find a certain sound that has like a phone message type of a feel, or a dial tone or busy signal, and we'll get that by dialing in the knobs in a certain way and then let that ride out. Because knowing that it's a 50-minute piece, you know, our tastes and our ears will find a mix between the two of us, and we'll just let that ride out for a while and then gradually do the changes. And, you know, it's kind of about like the space between the messages is kind of, you know, the slowly moving pace to it.
Yeah, it's nice to let some of the sounds ride out, and they do kind of take on their own harmonics. And we haven't really made any changes to the core concept of the piece, but after we get the live recording back and we listen to it a little bit on our own, and then we get together and listen to it together, and yeah, I really liked what we did about 10 minutes into it, and oh my goodness, what was that, you know, about 30 minutes into it. And then when we play the live show, you know, sometimes we try to capture a little bit of that, you know. So as you know, as a traditional band has songs, you know, we as an improv unit, we have modes, I would say almost, or motifs that we like to, you know, kind of create on the fly and then reflect upon it and then try to recapture. So every live performance is built to a degree on the last one.
What I think would be, what I think is interesting is you were talking earlier about like actually getting some laughs out of people.
Yeah,
if you did
that's
like
been great.
A live recording.
Yeah,
you got some of the laughs on there.
Yeah.
You know
Ross had done some of that where there's a mix between the microphones in the room and then direct from the board. So you kind of do hear that, and that's definitely something, you know.
Because I mean, it's part of the performance, you know, like the person coughing at the rests in the symphony type of thing.
Right,
you know?
right.
People sneezing and glasses clinking, all the bar action that happens.
Like the guy, you know, at the ice machine, the bartender who's, you know, filling people's ice.
And I really like the comic relief aspect of it. We certainly didn't anticipate it. Any way you can make people laugh and smile, I think, is great. And there's actually one show where someone came up to me and they said, "Oh, that was so funny, especially the thing about the Cheerios." And I thought it was so great that they had, and they were talking about the whole piece. They said that was so funny. They experienced it as like something that was funny, like a sitcom or a stand-up comedian. And then I stopped and thought, and I'm like, I don't think there's anything in there about Cheerios, but you know, that was his experience. That's what he heard, and that's the magic of the piece right there.
It's audio voyeurism.
Right. Because you're tapped into something, but you don't have enough information to really know what's going on. So your brain, you know, interprets the rest of it and adds it, and that's how you're bringing your individual personality to the experience. And you know, we get some of that too as performers, so it works out for everybody.
It's like a game of telephone.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, literally.
It really is a game of telephone.
Jeez.
And it's crazy because some people be talking during the performance, and it's an interesting recording to kind of hear the different voices going on, and you know, there's definitely something to that too. And it's not something that like we would frown upon if people are kind of chatting amongst themselves or something, because it has like a pacing to it that, you know, it is like watching a film. So, you know, you can talk a bit here and there. I would imagine that's all part and parcel, and I'm always curious to hear when people do that. You know, it's part of the experience for us, I think.
Yeah, and you can experience art of any medium so many different ways. You can stare at a painting for 7 minutes or 17 days, or you can listen to a piece while you're washing the car, or you can sit in a completely silent room and, you know, try to experience everything with it. So when we play live in a gallery or in a club or something, you know, people are, you know, talking amongst themselves. Some people just listen the whole time. Some people listen and look. Some people listen and look in the other direction. But I think that's all a really great way to experience it, versus the traditional, you know, sit in a red velvet chair and look in one direction and watch the whole show the whole time.
Right. I think Quarters even had popcorn, which is pretty good.
Oh, yeah. We like popcorn.
Get some munchies in there. All right. Well, I'm going to start wrapping it up here, guys. Thank you for coming in, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you,
Alexi.
Keith.
Is really good.
Yes.
I want to mention really quickly before I sign off, this weekend is the Midwest Small Press Fest. It starts tomorrow. The opening reception is at Woodland Pattern at 720 East Locust from 6 to 9. At 6:30, Strange Cage presents, and then Surrealism in the Midwest panel at 7:30. And then the Nut Factory event is the AV Literary Theatrics, which is 3720 North Fratney, starting at 9:30, going till about midnight. On Saturday, June 2nd, we've got the book fair at the Polish Falcon. That's where you're going to see all your small presses from around the Midwest coming out to sell their wares. You should come out and support that. Peruse things, pick up something. Just, you know, please support everybody that's there. Later on, there's going to be workshops from about 11 to 5 p.m., all during that book fair at the Cream City Collectives at 732 East Clark Street. We've got, geez, I'm reading off the whole thing here. I want to make sure I get as much as I can.
Who's kind of organizing that, Keith? Is that Cynthia and you? And
Cynthia, Edwin have done most of the organization to this. My contribution was to organize one of the fundraisers and doing the Burdock release at Jackpot Gallery on Saturday night at 7 till 10 o'clock. And there's events before and after the Burdock release reading, which is at 7:30 or 7 o'clock, excuse me. And Burdock 11 is going to be a paper issue. It's not going to be a CD like issue 10. That was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. That
yeah, that was a really interesting kind of concept, is to have these series of 9 chapbooks type of a concept, and then I really thought it was amazing how you had switched the format completely to a CD and pooled together the diversity that is Milwaukee into Burdock 10, which we didn't really touch upon too much here.
Well, hopefully people will listen to this podcast and get a sense of what Burdock Magazine and Burdock Radio are about, and then they'll want to go pick up a copy. You can get copies of Burdock 2 through 10 at Woodland Pattern. Issue 1 is gone. I gave that one away for free way back in 2006. So, but all the other issues are out there. There's plenty of really great poets from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Midwest, the United States, and around the world, actually. And there's even a couple poets from out of the country.
Good stuff.
I want to wrap it up here with another track from Burdock 10. This is The Atmospheres.
Yeah, it's a project that Erna Fransons from Antwerp, Belgium, oversee. Hi, Erna. How you doing? I think she's listening. If not, she'll hear the archive.
All right. And this is The Atmos Streets. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Burdock Radio. I'm your host, Keith Gosted, signing off.
Merci beaucoup. À la prochaine.